futuristic vision of potential disruption in this space that I mentioned earlier this morning. So, before I hand it off to Craig, I will introduce the panel at a high level. Again, the topic is financial wellness, and it's really a broad look at navigating the financial wellness landscape. Craig will lead and show some data and some research that he's been involved with here at EBRI. And we also have Jeff Tulloch, VP of Group Benefits from PlanSmart at MetLife. Greg Ward, Think Tank Director at Financial Finesse. And we also have Nicholas Holeman, who's a Senior Financial Planner with Betterment. So I will step out of the way and let Craig take over. Thanks.
Thank you, Michael. I just want to kind of give you an overview of the landscape of where we're at with financial wellness or financial well-being programs. We can kind of see that there's a lot of people, a lot of entities or companies that are in this landscape or starting out in this landscape, all from retirement providers, financial consulting, insurance carriers, fintech, and then we have single product providers such as student loan providers that provide just products for one specific aspect of the financial wellness world. And how these models or how they provide it and who they provide it through and what to focus on are all different depending upon how they conduct their business. Anything from being fees based, having margins on the products they sold, who actually engages with the employees, whether it's an investment advisor from a retirement provider, or if it's salaried financial planners who provide some financial counseling, or commissioned agents for single products. And then we can focus on, obviously retirement products. Retirement providers are focusing on retirement. The financial counseling is more broad-based of a full budget. And then obviously the carriers and other benefit are generally focused on single items like insurance or a single provider such as a student loan product that they would take over. So this kind of looks at the world of those with pride. There's a lot of people that are starting to get involved in these products in this space, and they're just starting out because we as a Financial Wellbeing Research Center came out with a survey last year that kind of looked at what people were doing and what initiatives they're talking about and how they describe the programs kind of on a high-level basis. And we could see that most providers that are either doing it or thinking about doing it are still in the stage of doing pilot programs or periodic campaigns. We're down to only, depending on how you look at this, around 15 to 20% that are doing a holistic program that's really looking at the whole financial well-being aspects out there. Most of them are more targeted in what's going on at this particular time. You can see kind of the benefits that they said they were thinking about providing or are providing. And again, that the overwhelming things are just kind of the single product things, like they're providing a discount, tuition reimbursement. Whereas you get to the more holistic programs, it's very few of the people that have made that step to get to that whole entire area of doing a holistic program for financial well-being. So, before I turn it over to our excellent panel here, they are going to be looking at this in a broader base of kind of even getting about what do we mean by financial well-being, what's included in financial well-being, and what that means for employers and what it means for employees. What are employers looking for, what employees are looking for, and what is actually working that they've seen working so far on these financial well-being programs. So that's where we're going to go to. Again, we'll have questions timed after all of our panelists speak. But for right now, I will turn it over to Jeff Tulloch, who will start at the high level of promoting a thriving workforce through financial wellness programs.
Thank you, Craig. So I think my role here is a little bit of the setup guy to warm up the room on the topic of financial wellness, and then I'll hand it over to Greg, who's going to dig into financial wellness at the workplace, to the employer view, if you will, and then I'm really excited to have Nick dig into some content around working with employees. What are the actual needs? What are they asking for? What is the assistance provided? So hopefully for the three of us, that'll be some useful information. So my comments today will be generally based on our experience with our PlanSmart program. It's a program that's been around for 20 plus years. probably 3,000 large employers over those 20 years have one component of a program, 7 million-ish employees throughout all those companies. So generally my comments will be based on our experience with the PlanSmart program, but more specifically, I'll delve into some recent research we just published for the 17th annual MetLife Employee Benefits Trend Study. And frankly, every year we do this. It's good data, it's useful information, but frankly, it's MetLife's Employee Benefit Trend Study. So it's written in a way that is admittedly maybe a little bit self-serving each year. I think others might be able to relate to that comment. However, for this year, I feel a little differently. I feel that there's some really great insight that came out of this survey. We interviewed 2,500 decision makers at all size companies, equal number of employees. So I won't go through the Employee Benefit Trend Study in total. You can access that online. There's also a financial wellness supplement to the larger study. If you'd like to see me afterwards, I can give you the actual web address. But the headline of our Employee Benefits Trend Study is, in today's changing world of work, for organizations to thrive, employees must thrive too, right? And within the study, we certainly call out financial stress as the number one stressor. That's no new news to anybody here. But it goes beyond just the financial aspect, and it drills into the workplace and how there's been this work-life blend that I think we can probably all relate to, right? I'm never out of work, right? I'm always connected. I'm always thinking about work, and that causes, stress to all of us, to all the employees. Certainly that has an impact in terms of people showing up to do their best at the workplace, but it goes beyond the financial measures and drills into certainly how the younger population, and maybe more than just the younger population, shows up at work wanting to believe in their employer and have a real belief in the purpose of their employer and applying themselves personally to their job. And from there, the employer can show up as an ally to the employees, recognizing that there is this blend, there is this stress, and thinking beyond just the financial aspects, but for an employer to show up really supporting the employees holistically, using an overused term, but showing up, understanding the employees holistically can really go a long way. So let me drill into this a little bit. Financial wellness has become a top focus for employers. So that is certainly not a new headline, right? I would say for probably everybody in this room and maybe beyond this room, that's old news, right? We know that employers are more and more focused on helping their employees with financial matters. But employers have increasingly become aware that loyalty matters, employee engagement matters, productivity matters. And if financial wellness is such a hot topic, for the employer to continually focus on that can have real benefits in terms of the productivity of the company, the loyalty of the employees, the engagement of the employees. And on the left-hand side of the slide, you can see that in the study, employers admitted that their top benefit objectives are largely centered around financial matters. So you can see the four that are listed on this slide. You can also see on the top right of the slide, employees certainly are asking for, wanting access to financial planning, financial workshops, financial assistance at the workplace. However, only 20% of the employers said they truly offer a financial wellness program today. And I think that's very interesting because, thinking about some of the information that Craig put up on the slide, this is a really broad topic, right? If someone comes to us and says, I want to talk about 401k, or I want to talk about dental insurance, we all know exactly what the conversation's going to be about. When someone says, let's talk financial wellness, you really have to probably ask a lot of questions to narrow down what specifically are you talking about and do you want to delve into. So that's challenging. Employers are trying to figure out what's the best approach for my population today, and that may be different than tomorrow. But then there's also just a myriad of solutions, similar to what Craig put up. There's all these different buckets, if you will, in terms of how MetLife, how Financial Finesse, how Betterment, how others, show up in marketplace. So it can be a bit overwhelming for employers. So interesting dynamic where employers are saying, I really understand the need here, but I'm still trying to figure it out. And I think all of us can help along that line. Financial wellness programs benefit employees and employers. So through the Employee Benefits Trend Study, we substantiated that certain employees say, yeah, I feel like I'm on track with my finances, and you can see that on the slide here. But then the difference from the employees in terms of those that say, yes, I'm on track with my finances, and how I feel satisfied with my job, loyal to my employer, happy at work, less stressed, less tired. So there is obviously this strong correlation to employees saying, yep, I feel pretty good. I feel right in line with my finances, and how that plays back to the workplace in terms of people being the best at the workplace, being engaged, driving productivity, things like that. And then I'll clear this slide kind of quadrant by quadrant because I think this is a little bit of the aha that came out of our employee benefit trend study. Employees' financial perceptions don't match reality. So 63% of employees said they feel financially confident, right? So call that 2 out of 3. Yet, number one source of stress is money. It seems to be kind of conflicting comments, right? That doesn't really make sense. Similarly, over 60% of employees feel they're in control of their finances, but half say, I live paycheck to paycheck. So how can I be in control of my finances and living paycheck to paycheck? And you can see some of the other stats here and the other quadrants. I'll point out this 30%. 30% of those in a defined contributions retirement plan have dipped into it. It's probably, again, not phenomenal news to many of you here in the audience as retirement experts. And then this last stat, 52%. 52% of employees say they expect to postpone retirement due to their financial situation. And that's up from 37% back in 2015. And there was some, for those of you that were at the board meeting yesterday, there was some conversation around people say, yes, I'm going to postpone my retirement, but does that really actually happen? Either based on my ability, my health ability, my ability to find a job, my desire actually to go back to work. So real challenges here, but there's this perception gap between maybe what employees think their situation is and reality. And I think that just the underscored part of that is financial wellness programs can play a big role here, right? So I think I'm in this situation, maybe reality is I'm in that situation, and how we design financial wellness programs and providing different forms of assistance at the workplace can maybe make the reality more clear for people and help them move down a path with whatever their specific financial need is at that point in time. And finally, I'll land on this slide before handing this over to Greg. Very simple formula, very simple slide here. So loyalty is good at the workplace, right? As employers, we want our employees to show up being loyal. If they're loyal, they're going to be committed, they're going to be productive, they're going to be engaged, all things that we want. Many, many studies that demonstrate this. So certainly we want to raise the level of happiness at the workplace while lowering the level of stress. And I'll bring this back to some of my earlier comments around the financial aspect is part of this. Absolutely, if we're trying to drive productivity, engagement, loyalty of employees. But there's other dynamics as well that the employees are increasingly wanting in terms of, does my employer support me holistically? Do they understand that I am an individual and this personal, professional blend is happening? So if we're able to focus on these things that can drive up the happiness of the employees, that kind of by definition would lower the stress and drive the ultimate loyalty and engagement of the employees. So again, a real simple formula maybe to walk away with. And with that, I'll let Greg come up and take it away.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. I appreciate the study that MetLife did. I always enjoy reading the research that's available in the financial wellness space because it tells us oftentimes what we already suspect. So what have we learned about happy employees? Okay, yeah, there's less stress, they're healthier, they're more loyal, they're more productive. I mean, aren't these things that we as employers want? I mean, how many of you are excited about financial wellness? Just as a prospect? Yeah. I was talking to some of you last night, and when I mentioned financial finesse, you were like, oh, I love financial finesse because of the financial wellness and the industry that's emerging. Just to tell you a little bit about financial finesse, you probably already know we were founded in 1999. And basically what we do, Craig mentioned there's some different models to how financial wellness is being distributed. There's kind of single product, there's vendors. We fall into probably that third category. We're a financial wellness provider that works with employers to develop their financial wellness program and then to deploy that program incorporating the different components. And the reason I want you to understand that is all the information that I'm going to share with you today around just how the landscape is shaping up is going to be funneled through that filter. And so with that in mind, I want to take a step back and really just kind of get us all to maybe look at this through a different paradigm. If you kind of think about how today has been set up, we've had our retirement planning session, followed by our healthcare session, followed by financial wellness. And that's been kind of a traditional approach that you've got this list of benefits for the retirement and the health, and then you've got these other benefits, things like budgeting and debt management and tuition reimbursement, consolidating student loans, pet insurance, you name it. They kind of all get thrown into this third bucket called financial wellness. But I want to kind of change that paradigm a little bit and take that step back as you can kind of tell what really matters isn't necessarily at the employer level what we're doing, but at the individual level. How is this affecting the person? And that's why we want to put personal well-being in the middle and understand how all of the different forms of wellness, we're talking about financial wellness, there's physical wellness, emotional wellness, spiritual wellness, mindfulness. There were two others that were mentioned from Cigna. Anybody remember what those were? Social, environmental. So there's different ways to understand this idea of wellness, but they all matter at the end of the day because we want happier participants, we want happier employees. So we have to take all of that into perspective. Now, with that being said, the CFPB, I think that's what they're calling themselves today, is that? Okay. CFPB, they kind of put together this definition, and these definitions, we've kind of seen different definitions from different entities. They all have what I would say at least four things that are in common. One is understanding what is the current condition of the individual. Is the current financial condition of the individual stable? That's certainly a sign of financial wellness. Are they on track for future goals? That's another important component of financial wellness. Are they experiencing a low level of financial stress? Do they feel like they have control and they have the ability to make choices? And then this fourth one, which I know for Anna this is really important, is are they protecting themselves from the unknown? Sometimes that gets overlooked, but that's an important aspect as well. So when you look at any definition of financial wellness, you're probably going to see at least those four things: present, future, low stress and control, and protecting so that I'm able to absorb those shocks, whether it's emergency funds or adequate insurance coverage. Those are all going to fit sort of into that definition of financial wellness. And so kind of with that in mind, let's take a look at how successful employers are developing their program. Now, we know there's a lot of benefits that are out there in the universe. And when you look, for example, Sherm put out research that just kind of put it in these different quadrants that are represented there. But, I mean, you tell me the average large employer has over 60 individual benefits that are available. Sabrina's shaking her head yes, so that means I'm probably right with that number. We are overwhelming our employees with this information. And if we approach this from a traditional perspective, the traditional approach to benefits, let's kind of take that, I think it was mentioned earlier, kind of almost like a one-size-fits-all approach. What is what we think most people need? And then let's go out there and enlist those benefits from those different providers. And then we're going to have all the information about each of these benefits provided to our employees. We're going to give them every year during open enrollment about a quarter-inch thick benefit guide. We're going to hand it to them. We're going to hope that they read it. And then we're going to expect them to make informed decisions. Does that sound like a traditional approach? This means yes, this means, okay, good. All right, so yeah, that's kind of that traditional approach. But what I want us to do is I want us to flip that around. So instead of having all the information about the benefits thrust onto the individual, let's start with the individual. Let's get as much information as we can about the individual. And based on the information that we can gather about that individual, let's assist them and guide them in selecting the benefits that make the most sense for them at that moment. You heard Craig mention that a lot of these programs that are emerging are being offered kind of through a campaign or a one-time offering or during a pilot program. But if we want to take this to that holistic level, this needs to be an ongoing benefit. It needs to be something that is engaging and then re-engaging the participants in this process. And so that's why for the holistic approach, putting that individual in the center and then helping them choose those benefits that are most appropriate for them at that moment. And then as their lives change, so does the benefits that make the most sense for them. So when we look at how these benefits, the financial wellness programs, are being implemented, what we're seeing more and more of is beginning with some type of assessment. We've seen that on the healthcare side with the health assessments. We're seeing more and more of that on the financial side, having these financial wellness assessments. And what is the purpose of the assessment? Somebody tell me, what's the purpose of the assessment? Yeah, we have to identify the gaps. We have to recognize the vulnerabilities. We don't know what we don't know. So we got to help these people identify things that they may not know. And so taking that initial assessment to identify those gaps is one of the values of doing an assessment. What might be another value of doing that initial assessment? How does that help the employer or the plan sponsor? Right. It helps me to understand them better so that I can deliver the benefit better, especially when it comes to education. We might be giving them education on something that they frankly don't care about. Instead, they might be suffering in a particular area where they could really benefit from that education. And then there's one more thing that the assessment's going to help us to do.
Prove that it's good because we can improve things.
It's a benchmark. It's a benchmark. I need to know if I'm actually getting better, and I need to know by understanding where I am now. So that's the value of the assessment. And then based on that assessment, as we said, we want to help the individuals to then access that information, but we want to make sure that they access the information in a way that they relate to. Some people can do it themselves. We found about 15% of the population, you give them the resources online, they know what to do, and they're going to go out there and do it on their own. The majority of the population, they would prefer some type of human interaction. So whether that's over the phone, whether it's in a group learning environment, whether that's in personal financial coaching one-on-one environment, that's the goal of the assessment, is to help them identify what education they can benefit from and how to receive it best. And ultimately, we want to see, is this being successful? So these are just some of the traditional ways of measuring success, it starts with engagement. When you look at the EBRI survey from last year, engagement was one of the top ways that employers are measuring success. And engagement obviously is very important. You could have the best benefit of the world if nobody uses it. Not very effective. So, what are some ways that we can increase engagement in your financial wellness benefit? Well, certainly design matters. And what I mean by that, is it an employer-paid benefit? Is it a benefit that's available to everybody in the organization? Is the financial coaching being made available by salaried financial professionals? That's what we mean by that design element. And with the right design, you're going to encourage that engagement. The culture is extremely important. I just had a question for Sabrina earlier. How many of you work at a place where the kind of health benefits operate in kind of one sphere and the retirement benefits kind of operate in another sphere and they don't necessarily kind of fight for the same dollars? And that's kind of that's a common thing, but are there any opportunities to bridge that gap and to take wellness to a higher level so that everybody's kind of working toward the same goal? We talked to a prospect last week or a couple weeks ago where basically they said there was a town hall meeting and the employees asked the CEO a question, and the CEO basically said, well, you know, that's kind of a cost to the company, so we don't really want to do that. How do you think those employees received that comment? We don't want that union management kind of dichotomy there. Instead, does the employer care about the employees? Do you guys think Comcast cares about its employees? Based on what I just saw, absolutely. That's the type of culture we want to kind of elevate. Certainly the communications matters, and champions. We can't say it enough about champions, whether it's local champions. Another client that we had that had extremely high engagement, the CEO did a video that was broadcast to the entire company talking about next Thursday, we're going to shut the company down for 20 minutes so that everyone in the organization can take their financial wellness assessment. How good do you think that engagement was based on that? That is a champion that I know many of you wish you had. An executive team was that kind of champion about it. And then naturally,
how can you do that in 20 minutes?
A financial wellness assessment? Yeah. Our financial wellness assessment, you can do it in about 5 to 7 minutes.
Health assessments?
I don't know about the health assessments. Those are probably more lengthy. So, but it begs the question, do we have champions that are willing to do disruptive things? Think about that. That's disruption at its core. And then lastly, the incentives. Again, I think we kind of recognize the importance of that. The way that incentives we see that works very effective, just incentivizing the right behaviors by giving them wellness credits or putting dollars in their HSA. These are ways that we can certainly increase the engagement. So that's one way to measure the success. Specific metrics. Again, if you look at that EBRI survey on financial well-being, it's no surprise that these 5 items that are listed are the reasons that employers are offering a financial well-being program. So certainly we would want to measure those to see, is there improvement in satisfaction, is there a reduction in debt and reduction in turnover. And then lastly, is behavior actually changing? You can have everybody engaging, but if behaviors do not change, not really an effective program. So just for a couple of minutes, I want to just share with you some research that is being released to the public later this month from Financial Finesse. We looked at 2,458 participants that took a financial wellness assessment in 2013 and then again in 2018 to see how their behaviors changed over that 5-year period. Looking at the various areas, you can see in every single discipline their financial wellness improved, but what was most surprising is the greatest improvement was in the area of retirement preparedness. That was a very pleasant surprise. And so just out of curiosity, we wanted to see, okay, that's over 5 years. Is that any different from 3 years and 1 year? And as you would expect, it certainly was. So there is benefit change, but what we're seeing is that the change in behavior over this population increases with the length of engagement. So not only getting them engaged, but continually getting them engaged over long periods of time. That's where we're seeing the most effective. And again, pointing out this is retirement preparedness as well as investor confidence. And we know investor confidence is really important because what's going to happen with all of the 401k participants when we have the next prolonged correction? What do investors usually do? They panic, and they move money, and suddenly that retirement preparedness isn't quite what it was. So we want to make sure we're improving that confidence. This is something that was also really important when we looked at the difference between 2013 and 2018, is we're talking about retirement preparedness, but that didn't just happen by itself in a vacuum. Other things had to improve, and in this case, the behaviors in cash flow and debt management had improved. And then as an improvement in cash and debt management, we also saw there were improvements in contribution rates to the 401k, over about a 50% improvement in 401k contributions, and over a 40% improvement in HSA contributions. So you see how improving cash flow and debt management can trickle over into these other areas. That was the one I already showed. And then lastly, just the type of engagement, before I turn it over to Nick, we also wanted to evaluate through a case study, how does the type of engagement influence behavior change? And so we looked at a population from one of our clients, did a case study. About 30% of them are not using the benefit, 30% are taking advantage of financial coaching, the other almost 40% are strictly online. And again, you can see, well, like Lori said, we got to show the visuals, right? We can tell the numbers, but let's look at the visuals. As you can see, there's not a huge difference between non-users and those that are online only. So technology is really important because it helps identify the gaps, but it's not necessarily the most effective at changing behavior. We need to add that additional level, that additional level of financial coaching. And as you can see from the numbers there, the improvements that the financial coaching offered. As there's more engagement with a financial coach, there's actually more improvement in 401k contributions. And then other areas, obviously the slides are provided to you so you can see these numbers. But again, the point that we want to make is that there's value in the repeat usage, and the more we can engage, the more usage we can get, and the more we can channel these participants to the financial coaching, the more behavior change you're going to see. As behavior changes, a lot of that affects the bottom line cost of the organization. So there's a win-win not only for the individuals, but also for the employers that are providing these benefits. So I'm going to turn it over to Nick so that he can share more about the personal financial coaching aspect of financial wellness benefits.
Good morning. Thanks for having me. So I'm honored and proud to represent the robo side of the space today, so hopefully it's interesting to you all. My team and my role at Betterment is not so much on the research side, but more on the client-facing side. So we're the internal certified financial planners that are speaking with clients on a day-in and day-out basis. So that's the perspective that I'll be bringing today. So really in the next 10 minutes, I've got 3 goals that I want to leave you all with. First off, what do employees want to know when it comes to financial wellness? What questions are they asking? And then second, what have we found personally to be very effective at answering and addressing those common questions? And then lastly, I'll run through a quick case study that we have just so we have a benchmark and some data points to back up those first 2 topics. I already got a good intro, so we don't need to talk about that. So first off, what is it that employees want to know? There's really six topics that I've boiled down that seem to pop up day in and day out. And the first is Roth versus traditional. Obviously that applies within the 401k programs themselves, but on a broader perspective, in a world where there's, like we were talking about, an alphabet soup of 401ks, IRAs, Roth, traditional, my spouse has accounts and I have accounts, maybe with different matches and different fees, how do I put that all together into a personalized plan? Second is external accounts, so feeding off that, but more on the investment side. Maybe I know that my 401k is invested correctly, but is there overlap or are there gaps with my external accounts, maybe my old 401ks or my spouse's accounts? How do I get that 360 view of my asset allocation for retirement and for my other goals as well? Debt versus investing. This is a huge topic, especially for younger employees that are dealing with student loans. But surprisingly, it also comes up with our employees that are near retirement retirement when they're starting to think, should I pay off, accelerate my mortgage payoff so that I enter retirement debt-free, or would I be better off investing that into my 401k? It's a really common question that we get. Goal priority. So I think one of the interesting challenges of getting more into the space of comprehensive financial wellness and stepping outside of just retirement readiness is that you get to interact with clients on a much more personal level, and you get to learn about all of their other financial goals outside of just retirement. So in a world where you only have a finite amount of monthly cash flow that you have to deploy to accomplish all of your goals, how do you prioritize that? And where do you make trade-offs or adjustments to fit your budget? Advisor access. So this means a lot of different things to every individual, but how do you engage the participants in a way that makes sense for their current stage of life, their level of financial complexity in their situation, their level of financial literacy, and their account balances? And lastly, fees is always a common point in terms of fees in the 401k administration, fees in the investment choices, and fees in working with an advisor. So I don't think any of these 6 topics are going to be a surprise to anyone here in the room, but these do come up all of the time, and Betterment personally uses it to drive our roadmap in terms of what are we going to be building in the next six months, 1 year, 5 years out. And I'd imagine that it should drive all of your guys' roadmap as well in terms of what questions you're trying to address, what problems you're trying to solve. So then on some of those questions, we certainly haven't solved everything yet, but there's a few things that we found to be particularly effective, and I'll highlight a couple that I think Betterment provides a unique way of addressing them. So this is the screen, what we call guided onboarding, that every new 401k participant that has a Betterment-sponsored 401k sees. We get a lot of feedback from HR representatives and new employees alike that starting a new job is a bit overwhelming. There's so many things you have to take care of that it's very easy to let your personal financial wellness, it's one of those things that's important but never urgent, right? And so we wanted to develop an onboarding system that was extremely easy and intuitive for these new employees to enact on. And so there's 4 key things that we've identified that are behaviors that we want every new employee to take and that we allow to do online extremely easy in a few minutes and a few clicks. And those are review your deferral rate, so how much are you saving? Especially if there's auto-enrollment, which we highly encourage. Personalize your plan, so the more personalized information you give us, the better advice we can give you in return. So things like, instead of assuming a default retirement age for everyone, tell us what age you plan on retiring, what your living expenses in retirement that you're shooting for, and we can give you better advice. Adding beneficiaries, just in case something happens. And then consider a safety net. And I think this is unique because this steps outside of the 401k plan itself. This is a separate taxable account. But we've seen that, well, one, it's good financial advice. Everyone should have an emergency fund. But we've seen that employees that do have a safety net goal created in their Betterment profile, they have less of what we call plan leakage, so less hardship withdrawals from their 401k, less 401k loans, less canceled deferrals when times get rough, because that safety net is there to provide as a buffer. And so that's a huge step if we can get all new employees to do that. Also, on the concept of goal priority, our design team is far better than I am at this stuff, but we make it very easy for customers to tell us as many or as few goals as they're saving for right now. Each goal can have its own time horizon and its own target balance for that. So I want to put a 20% down payment on a house in 5 years, or I want to retire at 65 and spend $70,000 a year. They can input all of those, and then we'll tell them, it might be a little small, but for example, retirement and safety net, they're labeled in green. That means that they're either on track or are already achieved. If we look down here, the dream home goal, it's off track, so it's flashed in red. Now, when it comes back to goal priority, I think that this is set up correctly. I would, as a CFP, recommend that a safety net and retirement are a little bit more important than your dream home. But not everyone takes that step in terms of prioritizing all of their goals. And so if your saving habits don't reflect your personal priorities, there's a mismatch. And that's something that we would want to address or speak with you about. And we've made it extremely easy for the participants to identify that. So I've grouped Roth versus traditional. that question in with the external accounts because they're linked. You can't really separate those two. But one of the features that I'm most proud about that we offer at Betterment is what we call our How to Save Retirement advice. And so that's on your left side of the screen. We have a retirement planning calculator that tells you that overall target number that you need to be saving each year to be on track for your retirement. But then what we do is we break that out and we rank order which accounts are best for you to save in so that even if you can't reach that overall savings target, you can at least start with the accounts that are best for your situation. It'll factor in, to answer the Roth versus traditional question, current tax bracket versus expected future bracket in retirement. It'll factor in employer matches. It'll even factor in fees. So it's basically just trying to maximize the after-tax, after-fee balance of each account and then ranks them in that order. It will even factor in non-Betterment accounts. So if you tell us that you're married, you sync a spouse's 401k, and you tell us that that 401k has a great match, we will tell you to start there before putting $1 into any Betterment account because that's the most efficient use of each dollar for that participant. And then the powerful part, when you bring that all together, we can provide overall allocation advice for your retirement goal as well. So we can see, yes, your 401k is invested properly, but how does that fit in with your overall allocation? Do we need to compensate and go more aggressive or conservative in your 401k to balance out your external accounts? Or maybe we should consolidate some old 401ks or make some adjustments externally as well, so we can have that discussion. And lastly is advisor access. I think one of the unique things about working for an online financial advisor like Betterment is there's many ways that we can interact with the customer, and we've found that increasing the number of ways that participants can engage with us increases overall engagement as a whole. And so some customers, it might be that they don't want to interact with a human, and I won't take that personally. Maybe they're okay with our online tools and our resource center articles. We see a lot of engagement from 401k providers that they want us to come in and do quarterly webinars and educational sessions. And then at the individual participant level, maybe they want to work with an advisor, but they don't need that ongoing relationship. Maybe an hourly planning situation might work better for them. And then, of course, there's the employees that want that unlimited ongoing relationship with a CFP. So all of those options, we're pretty much agnostic about which one you choose. As long as you're getting the advice that you need, we're happy. And so I'll wrap up with a quick overview of a case study just to highlight some of these things that we're talking about. So one of our 401k one of our 401k companies is a great cybersecurity company called WatchGuard, and they were gracious enough to allow us to work with them to get some great data both before they transition their 401k over to Betterment and then immediately after, and so we can measure the impact. And that's a little bit of demographic info about WatchGuard itself, but what we did is we identified 3 key metrics that we thought would have the largest impact on WatchGuard's employees, and we tried to measure those. And we found really incredible results across all 3. So the first is increased participation rate. So just overall, how many employees are actively saving into the plan. Second is, of those employees that are saving, how much are they saving? And those numbers went up as well. And then on the investment side, how many employees are investing according to what we would believe to be an appropriate risk level given their current age and target retirement age. And we saw improvements across the board, mainly due to some smart defaults, as was said earlier on the panel, auto-enrollment, auto-escalation, re-enrollment when, at certain periods, and then QDIAs or default investments. What we did was we quantified the benefit, the expected benefit over each employee's working career, and when we add those 3 metrics up, it totaled over $55 million in added retirement wealth across all of the employees, which is huge. Particularly, the single largest factor by far was just getting more employees saving into the account. And so I can nerd out about complex investment strategies and taxes all day long, but we all know that the single most important thing is just encouraging people to save early, save often, and save more. And so it's no surprise that was the single driving factor in this calculation. And then lastly, this is a really interesting slide. So this slide is measuring before the transition to the Betterment 401k. It's measuring the deviation away from what we would recommend as an appropriate investment allocation. And so the larger the numbers, plus or minus, the further you get away from zero, means that these employees are strongly deviating away from what we would deem appropriate investment advice. And as you can see, it's pretty much all over the board. There's not a lot of quality investment advice that I would say going on here. Afterwards, this is what it looked like. So much tighter spread. And that's, again, plan design, just interface design, good defaults. And so this was extremely powerful as well. And we know that investor behavior has a huge impact. And so if we can match people to what we believe to be more effective and then communicate that over time and auto-adjust that, decrease the risk as they get older, we think that's going to have a huge impact on investor behavior as well. That's it. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you, panelists. Remember, if anyone has some questions, please come up to the microphone and ask. First of all, I wanted to kind of ask, did you drill down to see if there were people of different ages or tenure that were more receptive or more interested in these programs and that were more successful in using them?
Yes, I don't have any of that data offhand, but our average clients are around age 40, and so that's a little bit different than probably a lot of other companies out here. But we see more engagement as employees age, actually. So older people tend to be more engaged on the financial wellness.
As far as the things that we measure, as you would expect, as incomes go up, financial wellness goes up. As people get older, their financial wellness does tend to go up as well. Engagement-wise, it's pretty uniform across the board, just depending on the demographics of the employer itself. But there are some natural improvements in financial wellness just based on kind of the age and income demographics, male-female kind of differences. We still see there's a gender gap in financial wellness, so we certainly would like to see that close as much as possible. So those are just some of the things that we've observed in just among the different demographics.
Did you find any specific program that you offered or the way that you offered to be more successful than any of the other programs?
Yeah, I would say, to answer that, Craig, that you have to get to the core of what are we trying to accomplish here. And I think that at the root of it, it's about action. We're trying to change someone's behavior, which is really, really hard, right? We get a lot more joy when we buy a new pair of shoes and we put an extra $100 away a month, right? So change behavior is like the root of this thing, and we're trying to accomplish. So in terms of the design of the program, I would suggest that there's kind of three core elements to get there. It absolutely starts with education, no question. None of us go through our formative years getting financially educated, right? Maybe mom and dad had a money magazine on the coffee table. I picked it up once. Maybe Uncle Bob had a suggestion for me, right? But none of us have any formal education. And we're a relatively bright species, so if we get educated, we're going to be informed, we're going to be confident. But the education in of itself doesn't get us there because this is about behavior change. So that's a start, continual information, continual education. But I think that in addition to that, it's about access. And I think we all touched on this topic at some point. And the access part is about not the younger population, not the older population. It's about all of us want to access different information differently at different times in our lives based on what the specific thing is that we want to zero in on. So I'll use myself as an example. At the end of last year, my wife and I got a new car. And a typical question is, should I lease it? Should I buy it? So I went online to one of the calculators we have, a very simple calculator, plugged in 3 fields of data, I think, and said, here's the lease outcome, here's the buy outcome. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I knew it was a pretty easy thing for me to evaluate, so I wanted the digital option. I didn't want to go any deeper. Contrast that with, in March, MetLife, we pay out our year-end bonuses. So I got my bonus, and frankly, I was not just going to put it into an account and hope for the best. So I wanted to talk to somebody. So I called my advisor, Andy, and I said, here's the money. Tell me what's going on in the market and tell you what my needs are. And he helped me invest it. So I think the access part is a second component in terms of we all want things differently for different situations. And then the third, I think, is the real holy grail aspect of this. And Greg, I like that you talked about the CEO video, because the third component is motivation, and that's cultural. And for employers to really be supportive and get behind this so that people have an understanding, wow, my employer really cares about me, and they're willing to provide me these tools. I think it's those three things that can really get to a real strong program.
I just say that it really depends on the client themselves. For example, we work with a mining company that didn't have any access to technology, and if you want to get miners to change behavior, you go to the spouses. So developing that program that incorporates the spouses was really important. And so just recognizing the dynamics of the workforce. If you approach it as, I need to offer financial wellness, so I'm going to check a box, that's not going to work. But if you approach it with understanding the workforce and what the challenges are and adapting the program to those challenges, that's where you're going to increase the effectiveness.
When it comes to engagement, I think it's increasing engagement as much as you can, but also channeling when customers do engage with you, making sure that it's in a positive and beneficial way instead of the opposite. And so we're big on design and behavioral science, excuse me. And so we'll take strategic things like we don't show negative performance in big flashing red like some financial companies do. The only thing that is color coded is, are you still on or off track for your goals? Yeah, the market went down, but you're still on track. So sit tight. Don't shoot yourself in the foot. Just channeling when they do engage with us, making sure that it's constructive.
Sandy McKenzie, I keep turning up like a bad penny, but I wondered if the concept of personal financial or personal responsibility ever came up. And isn't the problem with our society these days that people are almost abdicating it? We get these proposals that a household with an income of $120,000 should get subsidized educational loans when the average taxpayer is paying, I believe, according to the Fed's triennial survey, I think the median household income is $60,000. I realize that certain problems are simply too technical for people to understand, but I really do wonder if the notion of the buck stops here is conveyed in these programs. Not that you should say to people, you can't tell people, hey, go learn the differential calculus all by yourself. But again, to make the point, does the concept of personal responsibility get a lot of emphasis? Because the buck does ultimately stop with the household and with the person. Thanks.
We think that's one of the main focuses of financial wellness is empowerment. We want to empower the individuals to have the acumen to be able to assess and make decisions that are right for them. One of the benefits for financial coaching is the accountability that comes with the financial coaching. I take phone calls from individuals, and sometimes I'm a financial counselor, sometimes I'm just a personal counselor. If I'm talking about stress in a marriage, that has nothing to do with money. That has to do with the individual, but that's a lot of what that conversation is going to be. So we would agree that our goal is to get that individual, no matter where they are, at a place where they're empowered to be making those decisions, informed, right decisions, and not feeling like they don't have really what's necessary. But the hardest part is then it's the concept of leading a horse to water, not making them drink. We want them to be empowered to make those decisions on their own and to feel that's a responsibility on them. A lot of employees do believe that their employers bear at least some responsibility in making that available to the employees.
Sorry, Ferry, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
Sure. But even the very notion of empowerment almost implies a kind of a passive person. He has to be empowered. You don't have to be empowered to say, I am the master of my soul. Mm-hmm. This is my decision. It's not your decision. It's my decision.
Sorry. No, and I think that's where, when I said earlier, there's aspects to it. There's the mindfulness aspect to it and the spiritual aspect to it. So if we all agree that everybody's different, everybody's unique, if we go with kind of that cookie cutter approach, we're missing so much. But if we recognize instead that the individual is the most important, we have to be able to provide them with what they need in order to be able to achieve the goals that they've established for themselves. And we can only do so much, but I think that's a good start.
I'm going to chime in. I kind of respectfully disagree, so this will be interesting. I think that personal finances are so extremely complicated that, yes, you do have to take some responsibility, but it would be akin to asking you to perform surgery on yourself to make all of the right decisions. It's just completely unrealistic, and education is part of it. Personally, I've written dozens of educational articles, but even sorting through all of the educational articles on the internet, there's no data that shows that the increase in proliferation of information has led to better investor behavior. So that's why things like plan design, smart defaults, making it as easy as possible for customers to make the right choice is huge. And if we're going to have as big an impact, there's a subset, I think someone said it was 15%, that if you give them the right information, they'll do the right thing. But that's the vast minority of individuals out there.
Hi, very interesting panel, and I have a question, maybe a corollary to what Carrie was talking about. Jeff, on one of your slides it showed that while 80% of employees want financial help, 20% of employers are providing it. And kind of there's this other element that's happening in terms of employer responsibility for employee benefits. We see more of the interest in the gig economy, employees disengaging from employee benefits instead of going the other the direction you're talking about, which is doing a lot more to help people. So can you give me an idea of what do the 20% look like, and what are their characteristics, and how do we get more to be more than 20% to be engaged?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think the part of the challenge, going back to a comment I made earlier, is what the heck is the definition of a financial wellness program? Right? It's so different for any of us that are polled. So there's no. It's hard to kind of zero in on, okay, this is a like for like, financial wellness program. So I think that's part of what will continually be a challenge for us. But I think the employers that we work with that we feel have a formal program, a robust program. It goes back to, I think, a lot of what we've all talked about is they start with their employers that really genuinely care about the employees, and that's a nuance, right? But they're above and beyond in terms of the culture of the company, how they take care of the companies, just the overall culture. So I think that is one kind of key difference. Again, it's a nuance, but it's a key difference. The second one is the recognition of their specific employee population. I think Greg, just talked about that as well, and being clear. Okay, before we've jumped in, we've done some work to really understand our specific employee, whether it's assessments, surveys, whatever, to understand where their population is, what the needs are. So they've done some homework there. And then the third thing I would suggest gets back to the access component. And that varies based on my last comment. What's the employee population? But ultimately, how do we get information and tools to people that fit for our specific population? So those are just a few things that are differentiated for me. I don't know if you add to that, guys. Spot on.
So great panel by all. I have a question as it relates to plan leakage, namely loans and hardship withdrawals. And that is, have you seen a reduction in loans and hardship withdrawals as a result of the financial education that you've provided to your employees? And I ask because we've done a lot of work over the last few years on education. We have on-site credit unions at a number of our sites. But when I look at the data from 17 to 18 for under 50K population, the number of hardship withdrawals and loans has increased dramatically. So interested in your findings.
We have seen decreases in requests for loans and hardships from the participants that are engaging in the financial coaching. It also kind of falls back on plan design. We actually have some clients that require their participants to speak with a financial coach as part of the process of requesting a loan. Now, what's interesting from those engagements is you get maybe several different reactions. One reaction is just hostility. It's like, my money, why do I have to talk to somebody about it? And then we become those counselors that are like, hey, hold on here, we're not trying to tell you can't have it. But that, ironically, that's very little. What happens to be a bigger reaction is, I didn't realize my employer offered a financial wellness benefit like this. So it is amazing. There's a stigma that if I'm taking a loan, I'm a bad person. And I don't want to tell anybody why I'm taking this loan. But if they actually can talk to a counselor who is going to connect with them and help them understand this isn't punishment, this is so that we can help identify what's happening. In many cases, they might be using the loan strategically. They might be using it for investment purposes or getting out of high interest debt. But naturally, we don't want them to continue to have high interest debt down the road. So there's that opportunity that's being we increase the engagement, we increase the awareness, we get the right people to the right service so that the likelihood, we're not trying to stop that loan, we're trying to stop the next one. And what we've seen is our recidivism, I think about 10 years ago, Fidelity put out a study, it was about 2 in 3 that would repeat offenders. Our experience has been about 1 in 3 of repeat users, as far as those that engage with a financial coach are less likely to take a loan again. So those are some of the results that we've seen through the structure of the benefit.
All right. Thank everybody for the All right, so we're going to step out to lunch. I believe it's just right down where we had breakfast this morning. Please be back here promptly at 1:15, and at 1:15 we'll hand the reins over to Mark Cassidy. So thank you.
Nice job.